So in this vast sea of fragrances that I have in my collection, if I had to keep only 10 designer fragrances and toss the rest, which 10 fragrances would I decide to keep? It took me a long time to compile this list. I'm very excited to share it with you guys, so make sure to stay tuned. So keep only 10 designer fragrances, toss the rest. If I had to rely on just 10 designer fragrances for the rest of my life, I couldn't wear any fragrance beyond these 10 fragrances. Which 10 fragrances would I keep in this list? Which are my favorite 10 designer fragrances of all time, basically? That's kind of what the concept of this video is. I'm very excited to tell you what they are, but before I begin, I do want to mention that if you are a fan of fragrance-related content, if you like fragrance reviews here on YouTube, if you like top 10 lists just like this, but also giveaways and unboxings, I do want to urge you to please consider supporting this channel. It would mean a lot to me. You have no idea. All you have to do is click on that red button in the corner. And of course, while you're at it, make sure to enable notifications by clicking on the bell. This way, whenever I do put out these videos, they will get delivered straight to your feed. So let's go ahead and get it started. 10 designer fragrances, keep only 10. Toss the rest. These are fragrances that have a lot of sentimental value for me. These are fragrances that I think are probably the best of the best when it comes to fulfilling the need for certain scenarios and certain occasions. And I actually looked back at some of my top 10 and top 20 lists that I've shot in the past, and a lot of these fragrances made it in the #1 spot. Of course, there are some that fluctuate from year to year because in newer years and more recent years, you want to give other fragrances a chance to shine, and so you probably put some on the back burner, but inevitably there are some fragrances in my collection that will remain classics, and I will continue to wear them and repurchase for years and years to come because they do hold a special place in my heart. So with that said, let's go ahead and get it started. Coming in the #10 spot is Dior Intense by Christian Dior. I know here I have the 2020 repackaged version. I also do have the original formulation as well of Dior Intense. And what I can basically say about this fragrance is it's iris, cocoa. It has this ambrette seed musk mallow thing going on in there. It smells a little chocolatey as well. It's a beautiful designer fragrance. And of course, we have the original Dior Homme, we have Dior Homme Cologne, we have Dior Homme Parfum, which kind of has that leathery nuance. So I wanted to strike a balance and I wanted to satisfy the happy medium, and this is right in between. So the original Dior Homme has that clean floral irisy lipstick vibe, and then you have Dior Homme Parfum, which has that darkness of leather, that mysteriousness of leather. And of course, this is the one that sits right in the middle very comfortably. This is the sweeter expression, and this is personally my favorite. I love wearing this one when the weather gets cold. The next fragrance is a little bit more aggressive, and it's a little heavier, despite the fact that I know a lot of people talk about reformulations and blah blah, but this still performs quite well on my skin. And this one by Thierry Mugler is called Amen, or Angel for Men. And this one is a Jacques Huclier composition, and this has caramel, patchouli. I know a lot of people talk about that tar note that's in there. There's something aggressive lurking in the base, and it also has a lot of ethyl maltol, which is kind of the ingredient that gives it that cotton candy and candy floss sort of a vibe. Now, I know what a lot of you are probably thinking. Maybe you're thinking this, I don't know. There are a lot of fantastic flankers from this brand, Pure Malt, Pure Havane, Ultra Zest, but I'm gonna go with the original. You know, the original has a special place in my heart. It is the one fragrance that really opened up my eyes to the creativity and the uniqueness among designer fragrances. You know, I was so used to smelling a lot of very safe, citrusy, aquatic, ozonic fragrances. And then when I smelled this one, as well as like Lolita Lempicka, have to give an honorable mention to Lolita Lempicka. There's one in particular called Au Masculin that I really love, but I have to be in the mood to wear that one. And speaking about being in the mood to wear certain fragrances, here's one that I think is the best designer release of 2019. And yes, I featured it in the #1 spot on that list, if I'm not mistaken. This one by Moschino is called Toy Boy. Now, this is a very unique rose fragrance. Oftentimes in the designer game, we don't get too many rose fragrances, right? I know there's Cartier Declaration d'un Soir, which is a really awesome rose for men, but this one is so much stronger when it comes to the rose. This one is probably a little bit more complex. I think the Cartier fragrance is a little bit more organic or a little bit more natural smelling, but this is also very natural and true to form smelling as well. The rose in here is not disguised by all these other ingredients. No, it's very much so up front and center. The next one is if I'm looking for a dark and mysterious fragrance. This one is also dark and mysterious. This one is kind of quirky. This one is very sort of seductive and sensual, but Tom Ford's Ombre Leather is a fantastic, dark, mysterious, and enigmatic fragrance. You kind of have this bearing nuance in the opening, even though it's not listed in the note breakdown as far as I remember. And I know there are some similarities to the leather, which you will also find in Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather, which is their private blend offering. And this actually used to be a private blend as well. It used to be Ombre Leather 16, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, they switched it to the Signature line, which I think is a really good move. You know, it's a lot more affordable and a lot more accessible to the masses. This one, Beau de Jour, is another fantastic sort of lavender fougere type of a fragrance that I also have in my collection, and I wear that one quite often as well. The next fragrance, I had kind of a hard time classifying it because it's kind of niche, despite the fact that the designers are or the price, excuse me, is well below designer level. This one by Armaf is called Trenuit. Now this is their version of Creed's Green Irish Tweed. I don't know if they intended for that. I mean, they did, because it is a reverse engineered version of Green Irish Tweed, and that's kind of what they do. They have Club de Nuit Intense for men, which is their version of Creed Aventus. They have Club de Nuit Intense for women, which is their version of Tom Ford's Noir de Noir. And so yes, they do put out their version of more popular niche and designer fragrances, and this one can be found for like 20 something bucks, and it's the closest iteration that you will find to Green Irish Tweed, in my opinion. This is an awesome fragrance, and it's that sort of all year round Swiss Army knife kind of a fragrance, which is why I included it in this list. And if you want the best of the best when it comes to clubbing, I know a lot of people will talk about Ultramall, and I'm going to be honest with you, I almost thought about putting it in this list. I have it right here, and I've worn a lot of it, as you can tell. So maybe this fragrance can share the spot with this next fragrance, which is Paco Rabanne's 1 Million Privé. This one, with the pear and the vanilla, that fruitiness, the sweetness, maybe comes across as a little bit too strong, whereas this one is a little bit more on the cavalier sensual side, right? This one is very bubbly, energetic, and exuberant. This one is a little bit more sophisticated. So you know what? I'm actually going to go with this one. Paco Rabanne's 1 Million Privé. I think it's an awesome, awesome fragrance. The next one on this list, and I thought about putting like Dior Sauvage Eau de Toilette. Can I say it's one of my favorite fragrances of all time? Not necessarily. And I would actually prefer the Eau de Toilette over the Eau de Parfum and the Parfum, but there's just something about this fragrance where I feel like it is very mass appealing, and it can be a great alternative to Dior Sauvage, especially if you're not particularly a fan of that sort of metallic, tinny opening that you get from Dior Sauvage. This one is a little bit smoother, but it also utilizes a lot of the same ingredients. It has the black pepper, it has the bergamot, it has the ambroxan, and this one is none other than Versace Pour Homme Dylan Blue, right? Of course, Versace Pour Homme, which is up here, this one is much fresher. They're both composed by Alberto Morillas. He did a phenomenal job with this fragrance. And again, Swiss Army knife can be worn interchangeably with Trenuit by Armaf, but there's something about this one where it has that designer level quality. It's quite smooth. It's a lot more compressed, if you will, where I feel like this one is so strong in that lemon verbena and the violet. So it has its quirks, but Dylan Blue is awesome. The next fragrance that I want to talk about is a fragrance that is kind of hard to get nowadays. The one with this name and this presentation has been discontinued. Of course, it comes from a designer brand, which is Prada, but the new one is called Infusion d'Iris Cidre, and this one is Infusion d'Homme. But of course, the new version, Infusion d'Iris Cidre, is the same exact fragrance, and this is the best soapy fragrance that you will ever try. Well, I can't really say that because fragrance is so subjective, but in my opinion, I've tried a lot. I prefer this over Prada L'Homme. I prefer this over Mugler Cologne. And yes, there are a lot of other clean, jasmine, iris, floral, soapy type fragrances with an abundance of citrus in the opening that kind of fall in the same wheelhouse, but this is my favorite. Prada's Infusion Diaris Cedra is an awesome, awesome fragrance, and definitely one that I would recommend. Then the next fragrance is the one that's coming in the number 2 spot, and this is a very sentimental fragrance for me. I actually purchased this in 2015 when I was on my honeymoon, and I was, I forget where, maybe in the Virgin Islands or Bahamas or something, and I purchased this fragrance, and I love it to death. This one by Guerlain is called L'Homme Idéal. And this fragrance is cocoa with like this dusty sort of powdery chocolate vibe. It is amazing, right? And I haven't looked at the note breakdown in a really long time because I don't want to, you know, influence the perception that I already have of the fragrance, which is this dusty, chocolatey almond thing. And I feel like if I do look at the note breakdown again, I'm immediately going to be reminded of the other notes lurking in there. And I'm going to kind of force myself to, oh, I've reviewed it, but I'm going to force myself to pay more attention to those notes, and I'd rather not. It's an awesome, awesome fragrance, one of my favorites, and definitely one better suited for the evening, but you don't want to get as sweet as like a 1 Million Privé or an Amen or a Dior Intense. Awesome fragrance, and that leaves us with the number 1 fragrance in this list. It's a fragrance that I bought the year in which it came out. I actually just did a video on this a couple weeks ago, and it was is blank fragrance still worth it in 2020? And my answer for this fragrance was a resounding yes. I love this fragrance so much. I know a lot of people talk about the extreme version, which is also very, very, very good. We are in agreement. The extreme version is great, but there's something about the original that always brings back memories of me being in college when I first acquired it. There's something about the smell that I absolutely love. The perfumer Olivier Polge is a genius in my opinion, and this fragrance is Spice Bomb by Viktor & Rolf. This is spicy, tobacco, pink pepper, cinnamon. It's a little sweet, but it also has that smooth, wintry, spicy, autumnal quality that you're gonna get in here, which is just gorgeous. And the extreme version is awesome. And then there's Spice Bomb Night Vision, which I'm not a fan of. And then there's Night Vision Eau de Parfum, which is kind of in the wheelhouse of like an Azzaro Wanted by Night. That one is also a little bit redundant and something that you've probably smelled before. And I actually thought it through. I said, would I pick Azzaro Wanted by Night or would I pick 1 Million Privé? And I had to go with 1 Million Privé. There's just something about this, that praline sort of a quality. I know it's not listed as a note, but it's that creamy tonka bean. It's sweet, it's decadent, it's gourmandsy. I'm so intoxicated by the smell that I'm not speaking properly. But here we have it. Keep only 10 designer fragrances, toss the rest. These are 10 designer fragrances that if I had to make the unfortunate decision to discard my other designer fragrances, these are probably the ones that I would keep. They're well-rounded, all seasons, all occasions, or I should say I have a little bit of everything, and I'm very happy with these 10. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm also curious to know if you had to keep only 10 designer fragrances for the rest of your life, which ones would it be? Please go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'm always curious to hear your thoughts. And of course, I had to leave out so many of my favorites, Versace Man Eau Fresh and Black Orchid and so on and so forth. But I think I am very well served with these 10 here. Thanks again for watching. If you're new to this channel and you took something of value from this video, please do consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. Make sure to also enable notifications by clicking on the bell. Thanks again. I love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye.